Well, hello, welcome to Under the Bonnet, and you've joined us again looking at the book of Isaiah. And today we're looking at Isaiah 34 and 35, two incredible chapters just before the narrative section in Isaiah. If the light levels go up and down a bit, we're really sorry. We've done the best we can, but it's one of those days when it seems to get very dark and rain, and then it's sunny like it is now. So we'll see what happens. Fiona, why don't you read both these chapters? If you want to jump forwards in time, just fast forwards on YouTube. But read to us both these chapters so we get a feel of them back to back, please.
So chapter 34 and 35. Come near, you nations, and listen. Pay attention, you peoples. Let the earth hear and all that is in it, the world and all that comes out of it. The Lord is angry with all nations. His wrath is on all their armies. He will totally destroy them. He will give them over to slaughter. Their slain will be thrown out. Their dead bodies will stink. The mountains will be soaked with their blood. All the stars in the sky will be dissolved, and the heavens rolled up like a scroll. All the starry host will fall like withered leaves from the vine, like shriveled figs from a fig tree. My sword has drunk its fill in the heavens. See, it descends in judgment on Edom, the people I have totally destroyed. The sword of the Lord is bathed in blood. It is covered with fat, the blood of lambs and goats, fat from the kidneys of rams. For the Lord has a sacrifice in Bozrah and a great slaughter in the land of Edom. And the wild oxen will fall with them, the bull calves and the great bulls. Their land will be drenched with blood, and the dust will be soaked with fat. For the Lord has a day of vengeance, a year of retribution to uphold Zion's cause. Edom's streams will be turned into pitch, her dust into burning sulphur. Her land will become blazing pitch. It will not be quenched night or day, its smoke will rise forever. From generation to generation it will lie desolate, no one will ever pass through it again. The screecher, the desert owl and screech owl will possess it. The great owl and the raven will nest there. God will stretch out over Edom the measuring line of chaos and the plumb line of desolation. Her nobles will have nothing there to be called a kingdom. All her princes will vanish away. Thorns will overrun her citadels, nettles and brambles her strongholds. She will become a haunt for jackals, a home for owls. Desert creatures will meet with hyenas, and wild goats will bleat to each other. There the night creatures would also lie down and find for themselves places of rest. The owl will nest there and lay eggs. She will hatch them and care for her young under the shadow of her wings. There also the falcons will gather, each with its mate. Look in the scroll of the Lord and read. None of these will be missing. Not one will lack her mate. For it is his mouth that has given the order, and his spirit will gather them together. He allots their portions, his hand distributes them by measure. They will possess it forever and dwell there from generation to generation. The desert and the parched land will be glad. The wilderness will rejoice and blossom. Like the crocus, it will burst into bloom. It will rejoice greatly and shout for joy. The glory of Lebanon will be given to it, the splendour of Carmel and Sharon. They will see the glory of the Lord, the splendour of our God. Strengthen the feeble hands, steady the knees that give way. Say to those with fearful hearts, be strong, do not fear, your God will come. He will come with vengeance, with divine retribution. He will come to save you. Then will the eyes of the blind be opened and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then will the lame leap like a deer and the mute tongue shout for joy. Water will gush forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert. The burning sands will become a pool and the thirsty ground bubbling springs. In the haunts where jackals once lay, grass and reeds and papyrus will grow. And a highway will be there. It will be called the way of holiness. It will be for those who walk on that way. The unclean will not journey on it. Wicked fools will not go about on it. No lion will be there, nor any ravenous beast. They will not be found there. But only the redeemed will walk there, and those the Lord has rescued will return. They will enter Zion with singing. Everlasting joy will crown their heads. Gladness and joy will overtake them, and sorrow and sighing will flee away. Wow, so quite a long reading and two really clear chapters there that Andy preached on Sunday. Andy, talk to us a bit more. Tell us about your sort of the outline of your sermon on Sunday.
Well, the outline, I think, is simply that 34 is a chapter of judgment, and 35 a chapter of hope, heaven, redemption. I think the context is interesting. So we've built up in Isaiah. This is the crescendo of all the kind of the judgment passages against the nations, and here it is. And we're about to give way to the narrative part of Isaiah, about 4 chapters of it. And that's really important because that narrative portion is going to illustrate everything we're looking at today. We'll see that next week. But for Isaiah, he is giving us this incredible picture of what happens if I do not trust in the Holy One of Israel, but instead put my trust in the nations. And what happens if I do trust in the Holy One of the nation? And effectively, it's a decreation and a recreation. God will decreate the world and he will recreate a new world. And that's what we're seeing happening here.
So it's talking about end times. It's talking about where this world is going. Yeah. And as you say, I'd forgotten that it's kind of the end of the first half of Isaiah, really, in terms of the speaking to the nations. And then verses 36 to 39 go back into the history again, don't they? The history of Hezekiah and Jerusalem. So it is obviously a really significant kind of sort of conclusion to a lot of what we've seen before. Yeah. It's pretty horrible, chapter 34. It's pretty upsetting. Quite understandably, you didn't focus in on it too much on Sunday. I found it really helpful the way you divided it up. The cosmic court, the bloody sacrifice, and the barren desert. I thought they were 3 really helpful ways of kind of, because it's quite hard to make sense of the verses and what's actually going on there. It's really helpful to have some structure. So just perhaps can you fill us in on some of the things that you didn't have time to say?
I mean,
Sunday?
I think the most important thing to say about this is, I mean, this is a repeat of what I said, but it's very important to say that it's what we were talking to Peter about last week. So it's poetry. It's not a photograph, but in poetry you are able to talk about real events. Talking to Martin Bussett at lunchtime, very helpfully, he was saying, if you look at the Exodus, you have the narrative account of the Israelites crossing the Red Sea and the Egyptian army being destroyed, and then Deborah sings a song, poetry. And in the song, she talks about the rider and the horse being hurled into the sea. Well, they weren't hurled into the sea, but that's not the point. She's expressing truth in a poetic form. That's what's happening here. And I think the reason why it's so uncomfortable for us is because he's taking the worst possible pictures from their time and showing it to us. So he's taking a court. Well, it's okay, they were familiar with that. But he's taking the sacrifice, and when was the last time you saw a sacrifice? But it was commonplace for them. And then he's taking this kind of decreation at the end, this desert at the end, and they were very familiar with that. Probably actually he's alluding there to Sodom and Gomorrah, how it's turned into a desert. So he's taking things that they were familiar with, but the worst things, and using them to describe. Does that help?
So I guess, as you said, what's really striking in verse 1 is that this is God speaking to the nations, and this is kind of last chance, basically, isn't it? It's you must listen to this. This is really important. God speaking loudly and clearly, and talking about his wrath. The picture of he doesn't spare their feelings, does he? The
No.
dead bodies stinking in verse 3, and the mountains soaked with their blood. And we've just had a soaking with the rain outside. Imagine that being blood. It's pretty disgusting when you actually kind of pause and think about what he's saying, a sort of torrent of blood. And then verse 4 seems to be, is that sort of Mark 13? Jesus
Yes, it
talks
is.
about
Yes.
this, and then
He's
Revelation.
quoting this. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, which again is their world, kind of things that they were familiar with.
Yes.
Leaves from the vine, figs from the fig tree.
And I think the point is that what is interesting here, this is why you said it's a kind of end of times thing. How do we know it's end of time? Well, you wouldn't do from verse 3, because verse 3 is not far off what happens when Jerusalem is sacked by Nebuchadnezzar.
Yes.
Because the streets did run with blood, and the dead bodies were piled up, and they would have stunk in a Middle Eastern climate within a day. So that's exactly what would happen. But then you go to verse 4 and you go, oh, okay, this is not, the stars in the sky would dissolve, the heavens rolled up like a scroll. This is God bringing to an end this world.
Yeah, so this is kind of, we're on notice here. God is going to do something that is will be eternal, and will bring an end to this world, and bring in a new age. Again, it's very visual. My verse 5, my sword has drunk its fill in the heavens. That's God speaking there, is it? And Edom. What can you tell us about Edom?
So, this is fascinating, isn't it? So these three pictures, running through them is Edom. Who are Edom? Edom are the descendants of Esau. Judah are the descendants of Jacob. Those were the twin brothers, sons of Isaac and Rebekah. And basically, since birth, they were at war against one another. That's the kind of the picture. But that continued as the nations grew. They were always kind of clashing, and none got the best of the other until eventually David did conquer Edom. But then the kingdom split, Edom resurges again. And we know that after this event, when Nebuchadnezzar does sack Jerusalem, it is the Edomites who will be going, no, smash it up even more, because they hated them. And, they were the kind of the brother power, and they wanted them destroyed. So he's picking it. I know it's another nation, but it's not another nation. It's meant to be symbolic of all nations that are pitted against the living God and God's people.
Right.
That's why he's picking it, because that was the history of Edom.
Yes. So that is primarily what they're doing wrong, is that they've set themselves against God, and they've set themselves against God's people. So the kind of the sacrifice language, 6 and 7, what's that about? The fact that it's kind of religious sacrifice language.
Well, again, they were very used to it, weren't they? So they saw a lamb being sacrificed, and it was being sacrificed for their sin. So it's that lamb, it's not me. And so the idea here is, actually, it is you. There is no lamb here. It's you. The Lord has a sacrifice in Bozrah against slaughter in the land of Edom. You're the ones who will be sacrificed.
So in the temple in the Old Testament, the lamb was killed instead of the person, for the person's sin, and God forgave the sin. And here it's saying the punishment will fall on you. There will be nothing to take that punishment in your place. So ultimate judgment, I guess, which is again horrible. Land drenched with blood, dust soaked with fat. It's just such a vile picture, isn't it?
But again, a picture they were familiar with. So they were familiar with the dust being soaked with fat. They
that
saw
that.
The
temple.
But this is on another scale, on another level, and it's actually their blood, their fat.
Yes, and verse 8, I think, is very key, isn't it? It's God's vengeance, it's retribution, and it's to uphold the cause of his people. So this isn't just random destruction. It isn't God just kind of being angry. It actually, I guess there's a sense of fearsome anger.
Yes.
But a sense of it being controlled and planned. It's not it's not God just kicking off. It's actually this day is coming.
That's really important. So,
Yeah.
Verse 2, the Lord is angry with all the nations. It's not that, oh dear, oh gosh, he's lost it now.
Yes.
It's not that at all.
Yeah.
It's this patient God has finally brought together a court. So it's not just being done rashly.
Yes.
It's being done rightly.
Yes.
And who is the Lord? I think verse 33-22 is helpful. Who is the Lord? The Lord is our judge. The Lord is our lawgiver. The Lord is our king. It is he who can save us, but he can also judge us.
Yes, I read somewhere really helpfully that in order for a king to rule, he has to set down rebellion. Otherwise, he's not a ruling king. So here he is destroying those who rebel
It's
against
true.
him.
At the end of
kingdom.
time, how patient is this king that he hasn't come before?
And this is what we pray when we say, your kingdom come, your will be done, isn't it? What Jesus taught us to pray. This is ultimately partial fulfillment of it, which is terrible. And then this awful picture of the desert. And yes, Sodom and Gomorrah, you mentioned smoke, thistles and thorns. That's a very common picture in Isaiah, isn't it?
Yes, so it's. I know it's talking about Edom,
Yes.
but it's like it's Eden.
Yes.
This garden being decreated.
Yeah.
And how would it be decreated? Well, it will become like Sodom and Gomorrah. Blazing pitch, smoke rising forever. But also it'll be inhabited by wild animals. I have to say, he spends a long time talking about the wild animals.
Yes.
I don't know quite why, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Halfway through
Yeah.
13, right to the end. Yes, I'm not quite sure why. Is it just stressing the fact that it's not home for human beings?
I think so.
It's which the earth was created to be home for us, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, verse 16, look in the scroll of the Lord and read, none of these will be missing, not one will lack her mate, for it is his mouth that has given the order, and his spirit, God's spirit, will gather them together. He allots their portions, his hand distributes them by measure. They will possess it forever and dwell there from generation to generation. So it's just the kind of the animal equivalent of the sulfur fumes, if you like. Does that make sense? So it's, the sulfur fumes will rise forever and ever. Well, also it'll be possessed by animals forever and ever.
And i.e. not be habitable.
I mean, there's a sense of
beings.
wildness.
Yes.
There's no animals.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wildness and fear.
For us, because this is a desert thing, what would it be for us? It would be bears roaming around and wolves howling.
Yes.
That's our sense
Okay,
of
that's
wilderness.
really helpful.
I think that's what's going on
because we wouldn't necessarily think of,
No.
We quite like owls.
Yes, exactly.
In our gardens,
that's
don't
right.
we?
Yeah.
So that's helpful. It would be sort of wolves and bears and dangerous wild creatures prowling around. It's a terrible picture. I was struck reading Isaiah 21 verse 4 that Isaiah, I've got it here. This is Isaiah talking about prophecy against Babylon and the judgment that is going to fall on Babylon. And Isaiah 21:4 says, my heart falters, fear makes me tremble. The twilight I longed for has become a horror to me. So Isaiah's got this strange longing for this justice to come, justice to fall on Babylon, but there's also a horror. So I guess that's a kind of good.
The twilight I long for has become a horror to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very good.
So that sense of longing for God's thy kingdom come, but also just recognising how horrendous it is for those who are rebelling against God. So Isaiah, we know, is a missionary book. It's a book challenging God's people to be people who shine his light to the nations, and they don't do it, so he has to send his servant to do that. In what sense is this kind of, because I don't think you brought out this application, I don't know whether it's right or wrong, of we need to warn people about this. I mean, you did say this is like a child running into the road, and you don't go, that's not, don't do that. You
that's
yell
why
at
he
them.
uses this language.
Yeah.
He's being deliberately
you say,
blunt.
if you carry on like this, you will die. die terribly. So in what sense is this, how we feel horror, but we also feel a slight longing for, as I said previously, the atrocities against Christians around the world, in terrible situations, Nigeria, North Korea, all sorts of places Christians are treated horrifically, and part of you just thinks that's not fair. You long for justice and judgment against their captors. But how are we meant to feel about this? How are we meant to emotionally, apart from the horror? Is it a sense of horror and longing? Is it that kind of...
It's the verse you just read from
Yeah.
Isaiah 21, isn't it? That there's a longing for injustice to end, both out there, but also in here. I mean, I'm fed up with reading stuff on my news where, some family's been gunned down in America, some atrocities being committed in Ukraine. Some woman has been hurt in Britain. I know you just go on and on and on. But equally, I'm fed up with what's in here. Andy Upton. Why did you behave like that? Why did you say that? And I think that's the emotional thing, isn't it? So I'm fed up with it. I'm longing for God to do something about it. Oh, and here he is doing something about it.
So what's the kind of application for us? Is there a change in attitude or a change in do this? What do you think it is? Is it pray, your kingdom come, your will be done? Would that be a right application?
So many, yes. A hatred of sin, so that I don't just become passive when I look at the news or look at my heart.
Yes.
Read the news or read my heart. I'm not passive.
Not many people could read this, take it seriously and go, oh well, whatever, could they? Because it is so awful.
Yeah. Your kingdom come, a longing for him to put it right, a deep sadness. I mean, that the people, my colleagues and friends and family may one day be a sacrifice because they would not turn from their sin and put their trust in Jesus Christ.
So this is talking about precious people who I'm longing and praying for. So it is a spur to witness. And to be a spur to witness. And Isaiah, what God's people weren't.
Yeah, and of course here's the elephant in the room, isn't it? That when was the last time you heard an evangelistic talk like this?
On judgment.
Yeah, where judgment is clearly laid out. And we don't do it because it's now so far from where our society is. And I'm not suggesting that you take Isaiah 34 as the next Hungerton Camp talk, but we have got to find ways in which we're talking about all the things we've been talking about now. Dissatisfaction with the world, the fact that this is not right, the fact that something should be done about this, and so on. I think we can do this, and probably I'm speaking to myself here. I need to do this a bit more, and a bit more intelligently. But to help people think, in order there to be salvation, there has to be judgment.
Yes, you can't separate salvation and judgment. No, thank you. That is, it's very sobering, isn't it? Because obviously this was something that in previous generations of Christians was much more frequently taught and possibly done wrongly. Didn't somebody said you should never preach about hell without tears in your eyes?
John Wesley.
Was it John Wesley? Something that is a terrible thing for us to talk about. Thank you. Are you ready to move on to chapter 35?
Delighted.
That would
and just so as we move to 35, I think the verses we could perhaps look at this chapter through are verses 3 to 4, because this is the application. So look, guys, strengthen the feeble hands, steady the knees that give way, say to those with fearful hearts, be strong, do not fear, your God will come. I'm a little bit nervous now. He will come with vengeance. We're a lot more nervous. With divine retribution, we're very nervous, but he'll come to save you.
Which is wonderful, isn't it? I mean, that's the gospel, isn't it? In kind of 2 lines. He will come with vengeance and retribution because that's what everybody deserves. but he will come to save you. Apparently, literally, that's he himself will come to save you.
Yeah.
So he's not going to send out a kind of
No.
crack troops. He himself will come. And I guess, again, I have no idea, but that seems to me to be pointing, as you said, to Jesus. He himself will come to save you in the person of his son. So this was written to, as Isaiah carries on into the second half, the exiles were, God's people, the exiles were in Babylon, weren't they? And I guess they would have had feeble hands and weak knees and fearful hearts.
What's the future hold?
This is terrible. We're away from home. Where's God gone? What's going on?
Who's in the ascendancy? All the Babylonian gods. They're all the ones who, that's everybody seems to be behind. I mean, it's you can absolutely imagine this, can't you?
So it's speaking to God's pilgrim people who are away from home, which is wonderfully needed. And what God gives them through Isaiah is this picture, this vision, I guess, of where they're going. What particularly strikes you about the vision?
Just so much. I mean, honestly, it's so frustrating sometimes to preach because you have to leave a lot on the desk. Look, loads here. The obvious thing is, isn't it, that he starts with a desert, verse 1. But the desert and the parched land will be glad. The wilderness will rejoice and blossom. Like the crocus, it will burst into bloom. It'll rejoice greatly and shout for joy. Now, part of my history is my mother was hugely into, I don't know what the theological word would be, but the idea that the nation of Israel is a fulfillment of prophecy. And if you believe that, I'm not disparaging that, but these verses were used to back that up.
So just explain that
yes,
to me.
So the idea is that the nation of Israel that was formed in 1948 is a fulfillment of these prophecies.
Okay.
And these prophecies tell us that the desert and the parched land will,
irrigation.
like a crocus, blossom and burst into bloom.
Yes.
And it's the whole point was, and look at what is happening in Israel now. They are taking the desert and turning it into this.
Yes.
Now, I'm not sure I want to be arrogant enough to go, yes, that's right, no, that's wrong. I don't know, but I do know that the main fulfillment of this is not in some patch of Israeli desert.
Yes, this is end times.
This is end times. This is the new heavens and the new earth. How do I know that? Because the language that he's using is superlative all the time.
Yes.
It just gets more and more and more. You know, the glory of Lebanon will give, and the splendor of Carmel and Sharon. These are the kind of like the top 3 places you've got to see before you die. You know, they are just glorious.
Yes, beauty, order, fertility, or something like that.
Okay, is that it? Well, you know,
that's what they kind of. Sharon is the place
Great.
of beauty. I can't remember, was Carmel the place of sort of
Mount
order
Carmel,
and beauty, and Lebanon was sort of lush kind of growth, something like that. I think.
You know, Israel is a beautiful country. I've been there, but it ain't that. I'm telling you. So it isn't that. Okay, and more than that,
it can't possibly be.
Well, it can't be that because who are the people who walk around in that land? Verse 5. Well, they're not the people walking around. They're not people who were blind but now are seeing.
Yes.
Deaf but are now hearing, lame but are now walking, mute but are now speaking. They're not that, are they?
So the context shows you that you can't just take those bits and.
It's got to be something more.
Yes, got to be more
than this.
Yes. I mean, it's extraordinary. The language he uses: rejoice, blossom, burst into bloom, rejoice greatly. So this is creation. Again, we see it in the Psalms, don't we? This is creation rejoicing in what God is doing.
Or in Romans 8, you know.
Yes, creation has been groaning.
Waiting for this. And what is it about it? It's not just an environmental wonderland. It's verse 2. They will see the glory of the Lord, the splendor of our God. That's at the heart of it. Here is their God. and actually he is the glorious one. And
He
he's
is,
the one
yeah,
that will
he's
give
the
them cause
heart
for
of the
joy.
glory. I love that again. I was looking, there's a they,
Yes.
and those, and then verse, verse 8, it'll be a highway for those who walk on it. And you think, well, who are these people that are being talked about? And then it's really lovely. Those people that God had been talking about are in verse 9, the redeemed and the rescued people. These are the pilgrim people. And it's interesting, it's they, and then it's who are they? They are the redeemed, they are the rescued. How does that, what struck you about that? The fact that it's the redeemed, it's the rescued.
So we've left the picture of the garden.
Yes,
desert
sorry.
to garden.
This is
No,
the
that's fine.
highway,
Desert to
yeah.
garden. We've now come to a new picture, which is the highway, and the ones who are on it, it's very clear, isn't it, are not unclean, and they're not wicked fools. They're not,
So they've chosen to be holy.
yeah, they've been chosen to be holy. But why are they holy? Because, verse 9, they've been redeemed, and because they've been rescued or literally ransomed.
Yes.
And those are two glorious words, aren't they? But in order to be redeemed or ransomed, you need somebody who's the redeemer or the
Yes.
ransomer.
The kinsman redeemer. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
The-
what's the opposite? Who ransoms people? The
Oh,
payer, anyway.
yeah.
The one who bankrolls it.
yes.
And that's the Lord. And so it's not that it's not that, all the bad people don't get to, all the good people do. No. It's those
Yes,
who
that's
God
really
has
important,
redeemed.
isn't
yeah.
it? Because Isaiah is a book about holiness. So it is the way of holiness, but the reason that these people are holy is because they've been forgiven,
Yeah.
not because they're kind of better than anyone else. And so they are this way of holiness. Where's it going from and to?
Well, I don't know, and it doesn't tell us. But I think you talked about those who are in exile. It's going from their exile in Babylon back home to Israel for them. And so therefore I think that's a spiritual thing for us. We are Christians who are in exile. This isn't home. I mean, we all know that. This is not home. But equally, we're not in the new heavens and new earth, obviously. And we're kind of spiritually walking along that highway. I think that's right, isn't it?
So it's a pilgrim's progress kind
I
of
think it's a
picture,
pilgrim's
isn't it?
progress.
Yeah.
Yes, that's very good. That's
we're,
exactly it.
We're on
Yeah,
that journey.
Yeah.
I was looking at Alec Mattia, who's written really lovely things about Isaiah. He talks about a protected path, an assured arrival, and a safe homecoming, and unbroken happiness, which is kind of what's happening here, isn't it? That we're on this pathway. We're not there yet, but it's a protected pathway because we've been redeemed and rescued, and there is an assured homecoming. What about verse 10?
So I think just in my I wish I'd remember this on Sunday. 1 Peter 1, 4 or 5, inheritance kept in heaven for you that will never perish, spoil or fade. And how does he put it? And he will shield you until that day, something like that.
How do you know you're going to get there? He's going to shield you.
Yeah.
Until you're there.
Sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yes, this gladness and joy, sorrow and sighing. What's the picture there?
Well, I mean, okay. So let me just get this right. So there are several things. First of all, there's let's not miss verse 7. So the burning sand will become a pool, the thirsty ground bubbling springs, and that's fine. We understand that. Burning sand is literally the mirage.
Oh, okay.
So the mirage will become a pool.
Ah, so what looks like water but isn't
will become the real thing.
a real thing.
And I think I want to be slightly careful because you can end up going, oh, this is just a fairy tale, Fiona, and the reality is yet to come. That's not true. This is real.
Yes.
But it's more like this is in comparison to the new heaven. It's just a mirage. It's just a mirage.
So like Shadowlands that C.S. Lewis talks about.
So don't put your hope in holidays and houses and money and relationships and whatever. These are good things, but they're a mirage of the real reality that's coming, if you like, one day. So that's the first thing. And then you end with this, they will enter Zion. That's the end of our journey,
Yes,
isn't it? And
yes.
Zion is the new heavens and the new earth. Zion is Jerusalem, the new Jerusalem coming down out of heaven, Revelation 21. They will enter Zion with singing. Everlasting joy will crown their heads. And then gladness and joy will overtake them. And sorrow and sighing will flee away. I mean, it could not be more beautiful. And my mind goes to Psalm 23.
As you said on Sunday, so
it's
this
just-
picture of sorrow and sighing, scarpering,
Yeah, surely goodness and
growing
mercy will follow
legs
me all
and
the
running
days of my
away.
life.
Yeah, and then gladness and joy overtaking. So again, so we've been with lovely older Christians in our church family who've died. We see the sorrow and sighing as they're dying, but we don't see the other side of the gladness and joy overtaking them when they actually reach heaven. We can't see that with our physical eyes, can we? But it's still real. And then, do you think 5 and 6 are pointing to Jesus?
Oh, it's just, I mean, sorry we missed that, didn't we? So,
Yeah.
So, I mean, yes, of course they are. So, what are they doing? So Jesus literally fulfills this because he goes around healing, giving sight and giving hearing to people and so on. And that is in itself a picture of, if you like, the spiritual healing that we get. Once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. We use that language a lot, don't we? But I mention as well that it's also, Jesus quotes these verses to John the Baptist, his cousin, who's in prison, and just go, if you're the Messiah, why am I in this stinking prison? Maybe I've gone the wrong path. This isn't right. And Jesus going, no, you've chosen the right path because I fulfilled this. And if I fulfilled this, well, then I am the Redeemer. I am the one who will ransom.
I am the one who's going to bring you home, exactly, the servant that Isaiah points to. So just as and I think verse 10 I was struck by.
There's just so many goodies,
They
right?
will enter Zion with singing. Gladness and joy will overtake them. Sorrow and sighing will flee away. This is definite. This isn't might.
No,
This is absolutely definite. So we can only see this with the eyes of faith, this side of death. So I'm struggling. I'm wanting to give up.
Yeah.
As a Christian,
Yeah.
I'm just saying this is too hard. This journey from this world in exile to heaven, it's just too hard. I just want to sit down. Like climbing Snowdon, you just think I'm too tired. I just want to sit down. What would you say from 35? How would you
But it's
tell me to use this to help me to keep going?
Fiona, verse 3, strengthen your feeble hands, steady the knees that give way, say to those with fearful hearts, be strong, do not fear. And you're thinking, what, because I've got to get on that highway, I haven't got the energy for the highway. No, your God will come to you. He will come to save you. Okay, don't worry, he's coming. I know you feel like at the moment you're crawling along the way of holiness, but he's running down that path to save you. So hang in there. Strengthen those feeble hands, steady the knees, look after your fearful heart. Remember he's coming for you.
So it's all about him.
It's all about him.
Yeah, it's
not all about you.
No,
it's not all about you. It's not saying, come on, run a bit harder. It's all about
It's
him.
look at him, look at what he's bought for you. So thank you. Just how we can use these chapters to help us, to help each other in the church family, to help us keep going.
And I think, friends, I'd just say, just meditate. Take this, and maybe take this coming week and just nibble a little bit of it every day, because this is like manna for your soul. This is good. This is so good. Oh.
Yes, it's great. Thank you, Andy. It's a good place to stop there. Thank you for joining us. Hope you will really be able to read and just reflect on this lovely chapter 35, and that will encourage you and strengthen you. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.